Now let's put everything that we learned together. So here's a sine function that's got all of the different transformations in it. So we've got the plus or minus c, that's the vertical shift. The a out front, that's the amplitude. We're looking at a sine function for our basic function. And then in here we've got the multiplication and the shifting left and right. So this is our compression left and right, and this is our shifting left and right. Now, we didn't do these together, and it does matter which order you do them in. Okay, so that's why the B is factored out here. So if you get it into this form, then C is vertical shift, A is amplitude, D is the horizontal shift. It's got to be in this form, all right? And then 2 pi over B is going to be your period. 2 pi over B is equal to your period. So, looking here, okay, we've got our vertical shift is 2. Our amplitude is 3. We're looking at a sine function. Now we are not in factored form, so our shift is not pi. You've got to be careful here. There's two different ways that you can do this. You can get this into this form, or I'll show you another way to do it where you don't have to get it into that form. So first of all, let's do it this way and see how that works. So we need to factor this 2 out. So we've got the 2 plus 3 sine. And then I need to factor this 2 out. I need to factor the B part out, just like it shows up there. So when I factor that out, it's going to look like that. We can put square brackets here so it's a little bit less confusing. Okay, so A is 2. That's our, oh, sorry. C is 2. A is 3. B is 2. And D, sorry, I'm getting out of order on letters here. I want to do them in a different order. All right, D is our shift. Okay, remember anytime that there's a negative in the formula, it's going to be opposite that. So this is pi over 2 to the right. Okay, or in other words, positive pi over 2. And our period is going to be 2 pi over B, and our B is 2. So 2 pi over 2. And that means our period is going to be pi. And we saw that before. If we put a number bigger than 1 in there, it's going to make our period smaller. It's going to compress in the x direction. Okay, so we can go ahead and graph it this way. Now, you can kind of go in any order that you want. To me, it's easier to start with go in this order. Do the vertical shift, then the amplitude, and so on. So the vertical shift tells us that we're going to go 2. Positive 2 means 2 up. And our basic function is a sine function. So we're thinking of a picture that looks like that. Okay, that's what we're thinking in our head. That's our basic sine graph. Okay, so take that away. And we want to shift up 2. So we were starting here. So now we're going to shift up here. And that's going to be our starting point, and we would draw it from there. But we've got to take the other things into consideration first. So our amplitude is 3. That means we're going to go up 3 and down 3 from that point. So we're going to go up 3 to here, and we're going to go down 3 to here. Okay, so our high point's actually going to be at 5, and our low point is going to be at 3. Now, if you want to, we shifted up 2. If you want it, it's not an asymptote, but if you want to kind of mark, this is our center line. Sometimes it helps to keep track of where that center line is, kind of like you used to have the x-axis when you were down here. You can kind of mark that and help you keep track of where the center of your graph is. Okay, so now we're looking at a sine graph that's going to go something like this, okay, and we just have to figure out where. So that's where the rest of this comes into play. All right, so our horizontal shift is pi over 2 to the right, so that's going to bring this point over to here. Okay, let me change colors here. So this is now the start of our graph. And then our period is going to pi. So we're going to do one full circle in pi. So from here, let's go pi away. All right, so pi was 1, 2, 3, 4 notches, or you can add pi over 2, pi over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be from pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2. That's 1 pi distance. Okay, or you can count pi over 2, and pi over 2 makes 1 full pi. Okay, so our sine graph is going to start here, stop here, it's going to go up to here, and it's going to go down to here. So now how do we actually draw that in? Think of your sine graph. Okay, sine graph went like this for one picture. So we start and we stop on the middle line. Okay, that's our dashed line. We've got that. Halfway through, we go back through that middle. So halfway through would be right there. That's at pi. Halfway between those, we hit our high point. So halfway between those, we hit our high point at 5. And halfway between the other two, we hit our low point at -1. Okay, so again, I did the shift over by pi over 2. The period told me to go pi away from that, so add pi to pi over 2. That gives us 3 pi over 2. And then from there, you're just dividing up the graph to look like sine. Halfway through the whole thing, you cross again. Halfway or a quarter way across, you're at your high point, and then halfway or another quarter way, you're at your low point. Okay, so we've got our high point, we've got our low point, and now we can fill that in. Okay, and we've got our sine graph from there. Now to extend it on from there, you just kind of look at what your increments are. So in a pi over 2 section, 2 notches, I did all the way up and all the way down. So if I want to extend this to here, we're going to hit here again. And instead of going up, this time I'm going to go down. So we always alternate high points and low points. Oh, I missed that one a little bit. Let's try that one again. Okay, and then I can keep going. I'm going to have another high point there, and another low point here. Okay, so these should all be the same size and shape. And then I can continue it this way, here, and then, whoa, and then here, low point in between, and we go on. Okay, so my tablet's not the best for drawing graphs, but you get the idea. It should be, the shape should be consistent, okay, and we should always reach the high point every period. So every pi distance apart, we should have a high point, and every pi distance apart, we should have a low point. Okay, so that's one way to do this problem. The other way to do this, let me start again, same thing, 2 plus 3 sine 2x minus pi. Okay, so the amplitude and the vertical shifts stay the same. So we still say, okay, we're shifting up by 2, and our amplitude is 3. Now the other way to get the shift in the period, and it depends on personal preference and what you're looking for specifically for that problem. There's another way to do this, the shifting in the period. What you can do is you can say, all right, whatever is in here has to go from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, whatever's in those parentheses has to go from 0 to 2 pi because it's a sine function. So you say, okay, this stuff in here has got to go from 0 to 2 pi. Now, if I solve this inequality, if I solve this compound inequality, it'll tell me what my x needs to be over here for the graph. Okay? So, remember to solve a compound inequality, whatever you do to one piece, you've got to do to all 3 pieces. So, we want to get x by itself. We can add pi to every section, like that. Okay, we've got pi less than or equal to 2x. This is going to cancel out. Less than or equal to 3 pi. And then we want to get x by itself, so we divide by 2. Like that. And we get that x is between pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. That tells you your x values for one period. So it's the same thing that we found over here, just in a different way. So x starts at pi over 2, ends at 3 pi over 2. That's right here to right here. That's the same exact interval that we found using the shifting and the period. Okay? And then you would do the same thing. You'd say, okay, halfway through, we'd cross the center line again. Up, down, and we'd fill that in. Okay, and then you would fill in everything else from there. So the A and the C part is always the same. Okay, A and the C part is the same. The other part is just a matter of how you want to do it. Okay, so you can do it as a shift and then the period over, or you can do it like this where you look for where that one period ends up, and that'll give you like one period of the picture, and then you extend the picture on from there. Okay, so that's the basic idea. We'll do a lot more of these in class as well.